Glencoe, known for its wild beauty and rich history, along with fascinating tales which capture our imagination. After the Jacobite Rising, which took place in the late 17th century, the massacre of Glencoe is an event which neither can nor ought to be forgotten. Took place on the 13th of February 1692, the brutal slaughter of members of the MacDonald clans of Glencoe by soldiers under Archibald Campbell and cast a shadow into many to this day. Their influence expanded and inspired the modern literature, most noting the Red Wedding events from George R.R. Martin's popular fantasy novels, A Song of Ice and Fire. Like many other tragic events in our history, have you ever wondered that things may turn out differently if we have been foretold, warned, and prepared? The tales of the wise women, and some we call them the witches, and with negative connotation in the post-Christian era, certainly had a significant input in the tales of lore since the medieval time. Many areas in Scotland have their own local witches, and Glencoe too has their own fascinating stories. And her name was Corrag. Prior to the event which shook the entire country, it is said that she had foretold the massacre of Glencoe. The redcoats were up to no good. The redcoats are coming, she told them. However, her warnings to the clan fell on deaf ears. The evening before the massacre, Corrag fled to the hills. When she came back the next day, the village was empty. The houses were burned. The cattle had been driven off, and there was just the haze of smoke lying over the glen. She found that MacLean, the chief of the MacDonald clan, was murdered, and so she took out MacLean's broadsword and cast it into the water of Loch Leven, saying, "So long as this sword lays undisturbed by man, no man from this glen will die by the sword again." So the legend told us, as long as the sword lay in its place undisturbed, it shall provide protections to the men of the valley throughout the centuries. Many battles took place in the history from that day on, and Battle of Culloden, and Battle of Waterloo, the Thin Red Line, Balaclava, and any of the wars fought during the 18th or 19th century. Men from Glencoe took part in those events, but there are no records of any of them having died in battle. Then, in June 1916, a dredger was brought from Glasgow to clear the bed of Loch Leven in order to allow the passage of bigger ships as part of the war effort. On the night of the 30th of June 1916, the captain of the dredger went into the Old Glen Hotel with the handle of an old sword that had come out in the basket. Knowing the legends of Corrag, the locals were horrified and rowed out into the loch and cast the sword back into the water and prayed that they had done enough. The next morning, the 1st of July 1916, was the first day of the Battle of the Somme, and casualties were enormous and included 7 men from the village of Glencoe, the first to die from fighting since the massacre in 1692. And Corrag also warned that if the narrows of Loch Leven were ever bridged, a flood will wipe out the entirety of Glencoe. When the Ballachulish Bridge was being constructed in the 1970s, a rumor has it that this prophecy came to the attention of the engineers. They never technically completed the bridge. If you look carefully at the concrete support on the south side of the bridge, you see that one of the 24 bolts is missing. In fact, it was never put in place, just in case Corrag's prophecy came true. After her death, the local decided to bury her on the sacred and burial island of Eland, the place usually reserved only for clansmen. However, a fierce storm started as soon as the boat set out for the island. 3 times they attempted to carry Corrag to Eland, and 3 times they were driven back by the storm. Some said Corrag was not allowed to be buried on the sacred ground, for she was a witch. Eventually they gave up and buried her by the shore near Balahulish, overlooking the loch. Her simple grave was not marked, but it was known by the mound where the grass never grew long. When construction of the new road along the lochside began, there were 2 bad landslides, and 1 construction worker and his vehicle were thrown into the water. You might say that's because he had disturbed Corrag's resting place. Nonetheless, Corrag's grave was lost after the construction. Was Corrag indeed a witch who can prophesy the future, or it just all coincidence? I do not know. What do you think?